families, creating a lifetime of memories. Sadly, some families are denied these important moments due to the sad practice of alienation. These are families divided.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's episode of Families Divided TV. Parents engaged in alienating behaviors are often considered to be engaged in a campaign of denigrating behavior against their child's other parent. Yet, do they really know what they're doing? This program will present a perspective based on knowledge of personality disorders and their likely involvement in parental alienation. These disorders include enduring patterns of interpersonal dysfunction and a lack of self awareness of the impacts of their own intense emotions and extreme behaviors. The implications of this are that criticizing or arguing with such parents is not only pointless, but makes the alienation worse. This program will explain why parents, professionals, and family courts need to focus on quickly setting limits and imposing consequences for alienating behaviors without criticizing, arguing with, or blaming or shaming with alienating behaviors. I want to say, as a grandparent, you can also use these same things that Eddy will be discussing with us tonight. So put yourself in the place as a grandparent and also as a parent. It's a really great episode, and I thank Eddy for doing it for us. We're going to be right back right after these messages with Eddy. Hello, everyone. I'm Elaine Cobb. I'm founder and president of Family Access Fighting for Children's Rights. I'm also founder, host, and executive producer of Families Divided TV. I want to invite you to our upcoming fall conference, which is virtual and international. It will be the very last one that we ever have, and it's going to be an incredible 2-day event, and I hope you'll join us. Normally we do the topics, where it's just one topic specifically. But this time, I said, you know what, we need to branch it out a little bit. And so I asked you to send in what you thought were very important topics to you. And so that's what we're going to be using and speaking on. We have two keynote speakers. Our first one is Dr. Edward Crook, and he, as a favor to us, we had asked him if he could do a study on grandparents who have never met their grandchildren. And there's never been a study on this. It's always in court or in the legislature if you've had some kind of a relationship with your grandchild. Well, hello, there's many of us out there who have never seen their grandchild, including myself and my husband Chester, who we've never seen our granddaughter Dare, who's now 13. So this is an incredible, extensive study that he's taken over a year to do, and we've recorded it now. And this presentation, I will tell you, is off the chart. It is incredible. It's awesome. I mean, I could just keep going on and on. He's going to give us much information, and he's also going to get this peer reviewed, get it ready to be got out there with lots of different places, and it's going to help. We'll be able to use this in court. We'll be able to use this in the legislature, and it is huge, very, very important. So I hope even those grandparents who have met their grandchildren will also. He's also going to talk to you as well. So you're not going to be left out. So if you are a grandparent, you do not, I repeat, do not want to miss this conference, because this is really, really great. So please, be there. His presentation is entitled The Eraser of Grandparents from Children's Lives. We're going to also have Eddy as our other co-host and our keynote speaker. And he's going to be speaking to us on court trends, the trouble with letting the children decide. Some states and court systems are considering letting children as young as 14 years old have the right to make decisions about whether to have a relationship with one of their parents. He's going to be speaking to us about this. And, Bill Eddy's with High Conflict Institute. He's written numerous books. He's got a new one out now, as you know. And you're not going to want to miss this one. This is a really good one. It's important that we know about all that. We're also going to have Dr. Joshua Coleman, who works with alienated and estranged parents of adult children. And he's very well known out there all over the world. And he's going to be speaking to us about reaching out to your alienated or estranged child, the do's and don'ts that you need to be doing. I get emails all the time from you guys wanting to know, what should I do? Even on our Families Divided comments, I get all that. He's going to let us know right here. So you want to be able to be there for that too. Dr. Sue Kornbluth will be presenting as well in this conference, and she's going to be speaking to us on managing personality disordered co-parents who alienate their children. Now, we haven't done a whole lot on co-parenting. We may have 3, I think, episodes on Families Divided. So this will be huge for those of you that have to co-parent and you're dealing with people who have major personality disorders. So Dr. Kornbluth is going to share much with this on that. And Dr. Mary Alvarez is going to be speaking to us on a very interesting topic. It's going to be called Parental Alienation, the toxic stress in your child's brain. And nothing is more important than our child and what they're going through this. They are what matters through all of this in the world of alienation. As we know, alienation is child abuse. And she's going to share some very interesting things. She's done a great study on this, so you're not going to want to miss that. Chris Turner is going to be speaking to us on trusting and understanding agents of court guardian ad litem, amicus therapists, psychologists, parenting facilitators, and court-appointed professionals. She's going to tell you, give us some information because it can get really overwhelming to us as we have to deal with these people. She's going to give us some great advice on that as well. And then Dr. Kelly Baker is going to be speaking to us on the therapeutic interventions for parent-child contact problems with teens. We've never, and I'm sad to say that, we've never done anything with teens. So this one's going to be huge. And Dr. Baker's really doing an intense study on it, and it is going to be good, but it's really going to help you as an alienated or targeted parent and how to deal with this with your teenager. We also have Melanie Gill with us, and she's going to be speaking on Liar, Liar, Pants on Fire. We deal with a lot of this in court with lots of things that are said that are not true. And, Melanie's really been through the mill over there, so to speak, in the UK. And she's going to be helping us in sorting out this important info. Also, Dr. Kathleen Ray from Canada will be speaking to us on understanding the realities of a reunification program, dispelling common misconceptions. There's a lot of lies and fake news out there on this, and she's going to share and help us to understand what is factual and what is false. And so you don't want to miss this one either. Then Attorney Chris Turner will be with us. He's going to be sharing secrets to litigating parental alienation allegations. Chris is one of the best attorneys, and I've dealt with many over the 13 years, and he truly is like at the top for me. He really cares about you guys, and first and foremost, he cares about you. And he's, a lot of attorneys, I've got to say, sadly, are out for the bucks, but Chris isn't one of them. And he's going to be sharing a lot with us on this, so please don't miss out on it. Also, Randy Fine is going to be speaking to us about confronting the mirror. Do narcissists face their own reflections? That is a very interesting question, and Randy will be sharing with us on that. Also, we have with us Dean Tong. he has a really great presentation on false allegations of abuse, navigating the three-ring circus. And he's really, really knowledgeable on all of this and dealing with CPS and all of them. So he'll share much info for you and how to deal with all of that. And then, to me, this is really the most important part of the conference, I think. Caden's Law has pretty much destroyed or tried to destroy our families. Well, we're going to have with us Dr. Lynn Steinberg, Yakov Achamam, and Robert Gaza with us. And those three are going to be doing a panel discussion. And they all three have all different perspectives on all about Caden's Law and what to do and how we can go around it and how we can defeat it and help get our families back together in ways that we can. Many of you in states really need to be paying attention to this. I'm going to tell you that as a parent and as a grandparent, if we don't stand up and fight for our children and our grandchildren, we can just about wrap it up and forget about it. So you can't sit back and say, oh, I wish they'd come help us over here and all that. Get up and get it done. Help everybody. You don't have to be, a college degree or any of that. You just got to have the heart and the zeal that you want to get up and fight for your own kid and your own grandkid. So be a part, make it happen, and come and learn from this. You can submit your questions, and we're going to have questions for all different presentations and especially for this. So we want you to do that. So don't miss out on that, please. That's going to be really important. I also want to emphasize that this will only be, again, through only the Zoom, Family Access Zoom. That will be the only way you can be a part of this 2-day event. But I also want you to know, and this is very important, if you cannot make the 2-day event, that's fine. We'd love for you to be there in person, but we understand everybody's lives are busy. So take the time and register, and you have between that following Monday, the 7th of October, till the end of December to view it. We'll have that for you available. And here's the secret. If you do register and you do come to the event, you can watch it as many times as you want. So that's going to be a special that I'm giving my gift to you that way, because this will be our absolute last conference that we ever have. So you will have plenty of time to view it as many times as you want. And I hope you will take advantage of it and do just that, because we feel like these topics are so very important and we want you to be a part of it. We're also on Sunday night, we're going to be having, after the conference, we're going to have from 7 to 9, a time where you can meet together and share your testimonies. If you want to share your stories and stuff, that's fine. And we're also going to be making a support group out of that as well. So come for that. And then on Saturday night from 9 p.m. until 7 a.m. Sunday morning, we're going to be having what we call the one-on-one chat room, which I lovingly call the Chatty Cathy group. These people have a great time at these. We've done these every international virtual conference. They get together, and I do not understand how in the world they can chat half the night online and get back in the morning for the conference, but they're doing it. But it's a great time to really open your heart, share your experiences, give each other ideas on what's important to you. We do everything we can to make this the best it can be for you and being supportive to you. I really hope that you will come and you will join us for this very important, incredible event. And also, I will be announcing to you something very special at the end of our conference. So please come, please register. You've still got time, and look forward to seeing you there. Take care. God bless.
Divorce and co-parenting are a major life interruption for families, especially the kids, but also for parents and grandparents. And it's even worse in blame-filled, high-conflict cases. When parents engage in alienation by turning the kids against the other parent or grandparents, kids suffer. They're denied the opportunity to build the 4 big skills necessary for future resilience. New Ways for Families online class can help. Parents learn to use our popular BIF and EAR skills to calm the conflict and stop the hostile emails and texts. And we even have a class for kids and parents to learn together. Research shows a 75% improvement in joint parental decision-making after this course is taken, plus overall improvements for kids' well-being. Don't wait to make this affordable investment in your children's future and improve your well-being too. Start learning new ways for your family today at conflictplaybook.com.
So, welcome to my talk on basically, do parents with alienating behaviors know what they're doing? And I'll explain why it's important to address this issue. I'll also explain why I believe that alienating parents are basically operating out of an automatic approach and not through a thoughtful, I choose to do this and I choose to do that, although there are choices they do make and things they consciously decide. But the main drive here I'm going to explain. So first of all, let's just look at alienating behaviors. So there's many that we talk about, and as you can see from this list, there's many that aren't included that you probably know about. But bad-mouthing the other parent, limiting contact, of course, not providing the child when it's time to, or scheduling doctor's appointments during the other parent's time, or saying my relatives are in town and so I'm sorry you can't see the child when that's not at all the way it's supposed to be. Suggesting the other parent is dangerous, and that's one of the ones that we see more than you would think, is that they have this picture of the other parent as a dangerous person, that they honestly feel that way, and that they project that feeling onto the child. I'm not going to go through this whole list, but I want you to be thinking about the fact that there's many different alienating behaviors, and I really wondered for years, and I've been aware of parental alienation for about 40 years. It came out around the mid-'80s as a concept, and I was a therapist then, and I became a lawyer in 1992 and was doing mediation throughout that time. So I've been dealing with these cases and these concepts for decades and come to the difficult conclusion that what we're seeing is something that's really not that consciously driven, and therefore we really need to approach it differently. But some of the other behaviors certainly point out displeasure at positive statements the child makes, basically implying that they don't love the child. They say, well, your father doesn't love you, or your mother doesn't care about you. She only cares about her friends. Things like that. We hear confiding in the child about adult matters. I had a case where mother said, your father has a problem that's so bad I can't tell you what it is until you're 18. Well, that scared the heck out of the kids. Like, oh my goodness, maybe he's a serial killer or something. Who knows? All of these are suggestive. They're very suggestive and build children's resistance. Puts the child in situations where they're going to be angry at the other parent. I'm sorry, you can't do this because your father won't give us the money. Those kinds of things. Anyway, this is a half-hour presentation, so I'm going to move quickly through here. So the idea that's been around all these years is that there's a campaign of denigration. And the implication is by lawyers, by judges, even evaluators, that parents are doing this on purpose. And so we need to criticize the parent. We need to wave fingers at the parent to stop doing this and to stop thinking this way. And I've had judges say to parents who were, I had a client who was an alienating parent. She was very anxious. She wasn't angry at the other parent. She had an anxiety disorder. She had a personality that was very histrionic. And so, and the judge yelled at her basically, I know what you're doing, when she couldn't control herself. And so getting her to reduce her anxiety would have been the answer. But instead, her anxiety is off the charts and the child absorbs that. And that's cases like that are a lot of what led me to develop our New Ways for Families method, which really does teach management of your emotions. And so that's an important part of it. So is it a conscious campaign or is it something else? And I believe it's something else. And it may express some conscious decisions that you see, they're going to do this and they know they're doing this, but the driving force, I believe they don't really know what they're doing, that it comes from their personality, that their personality is driving them with these behaviors, even if they were to resist them logically, that they're so overwhelming that they go into these alienating behaviors, and this becomes who they are, that who they are is a person engaged in alienating behaviors. And this is acknowledged by other professionals. And so here's a couple quotes about parents lacking insight. You know, it's noteworthy that some preferred parents lack insight into the significance of their alienating behaviors. So they readily describe them to an evaluator. For example, yes, doctor, of course, I tell Mary Lou to call 911 if her father does anything that makes her uncomfortable. I want her to be safe. So what this implies emotionally is the other parent is dangerous, and so dangerous that you should call 911. Or some parents may not be aware of their behavior in affecting the relationship between the child and the targeted parent. For instance, a father who's angry with the mother because of infidelity may engage in alienating behaviors without the purpose of drawing the child away from the mother. They're just venting that they're angry that this happened. The relationship may have ended because of infidelity. And so what we're seeing is what's driving isn't this organized, logical, intellectual process. And yet we tend to approach alienating parents as professionals and as co-parents with anger. It's like, why did you decide to behave this way? Can't you see how bad you're being? Can't you see the trouble you're causing? Can't you see how hard this is on the child? And what I want to say is, I think they don't. And the reason why is I really think that most of them have personality disorders. And that's something I've been studying since 1980. And as a therapist for 12 years, and then as a lawyer for over 30 years. So I'm going to give you a disclaimer. A seminar does not train you to diagnose personalities. It may be harmful to tell someone that you believe they have a personality disorder or problem or high conflict personality. So I just want to give you some background to understand that what we're dealing with is generally unconscious drives and how they operate and how we can address that, because they do need to be stopped. These behaviors need to be stopped. And so the manual, the diagnostic manual known as the DSM, if you're aware of this, it's the DSM-5 TR, that's text revision. The DSM-5 manual came out in 2013. The DSM-5 TR came out in 2022. The DSM-5 TR now says that approximately 10% of the adult population has a personality disorder. I want you to know how huge that is. About 7 or 8% are alcoholics, have alcoholism as a diagnosis. Now, people with other substance abuse puts all of the substance abuse problems up to about 13, 14, 15% of adults. But personality disorders at 10% of the population, and I would say probably 20% of family court custody disputes. There's certainly a presence there. And characteristic of personality disorders is all or nothing thinking. So let me go through some of the characteristics of personality disorders. Now, this is from the DSM, but as I said, don't tell somebody you think this about them, and don't say this, and don't be sure. You're not licensed and trained to diagnose people. But we all need to understand this, just like we all understand alcoholism is a problem beyond someone's conscious control, but there's treatment for it, and then they can stop, and generally stop by stopping drinking altogether. Anyway, so the general criteria, first of all, is enduring pattern. And that's what so many professionals don't understand. What you see today as a pattern, you're going to see 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now. And so this generally is something that's not going to change in a major way. And that's why these cases often just drag on, they get bigger, they get worse, but people, you don't see them really changing. With that, I want to give an exception, and that is some people, small percentage of people, maybe 2 or 3% of people with personality disorders actually work on overcoming their personality disorder. So for example, with borderline personality disorder, there's a treatment called DBT, dialectical behavior therapy. And people that go through that can outgrow the personality disorder, become more flexible, become better at managing their emotions. Anyway, so there's all of that. Moving on. So people with personality disorders tend to be blamers because they can't connect the dots back to their own behavior of what's going on in their life, what's going wrong in their life, and the conflicts they get into. So they honestly believe that other people are 100% responsible for their problems. And they put a lot of energy, including a lot of anger, into blaming other people when it's not really the other person. But they can't connect the dots with that. And that's part of a personality disorder, is this not having self-awareness. And you can't give it to them by yelling at them, by whispering at them, putting it in writing or whatever. And I try to teach this to judges, is yelling at people with personality disorders doesn't make things better and sometimes makes them worse. So it's much better to matter-of-factly talk about setting limits and imposing consequences. That's what you have to do. Don't argue or criticize or express frustration. Is matter-of-fact, setting limits and imposing consequences. Accountability. That's where the action is. Lectures from a judge, from lawyers, from therapists, from evaluators is not where the action is that's going to make a difference. So I want people to realize that. So they can be blamers. They feel like they're victims. And people take them seriously if they don't understand this is a characteristic of personality disorders. They tend to have unrestrained aggressive behavior. So they keep at it even when it looks like it'd be self-defeating. They seem to be unable to stop themselves. So, I've had parents, I remember one mediation I was doing, and mom was angry at dad in the middle of the mediation. She starts yelling at him. And I say, okay, well, slow down. I got to meet separately with each of you for a few minutes. And I met separately and I calmed the mom down. And then I mentioned as a side comment, I said, I hope you don't get this angry about the dad in front of the children. And she like yells at me, I would never get this angry in front of the children, which showed to me she lacked impulse control, which is a problem of personality disorders, which means she very much does that in front of the children because she can't control herself. And that, of course, is an alienating behavior, especially if she yells about dad in front of the children. So 3 personalities have characteristics. So antisocial personalities, in the manual it says they have a lack of remorse, as indicated by being indifferent to or rationalizing having hurt, mistreated, or stolen from another. So when a parent has this disorder, they lack remorse. They don't care that they're influencing the child negatively, and they're not even aware of it. And so that's a driving characteristic. Borderline personalities, inappropriate, intense anger or difficulty controlling anger. In other words, frequent displays of temper, constant anger, recurrent physical fights. Not everybody with this personality has that characteristic, but many people do. And that's often what we see. People can't control their emotions and their impulses. Narcissistic personalities, people are familiar with that term, but not necessarily with the disorder. One of the criteria for the disorder is lacks empathy and unwilling to recognize or identify with the feelings and needs of others. And so this helps explain why they don't care, that they may be hurtful to the child, they may be hurtful to the other parent. A lot of these folks split the children, so they treat one child as favored and another child as disfavored, or they're just neutral towards. And so you may see one child becomes alienated and the other child's kind of neutral. I love my parents equally. And they go back and forth while the alienated child says, I'm not going. And we see a lot of families like this. Anyway, this goes with personality disorders. Personality disorders are interpersonal. So they basically are about close relationships. One's children, one's parents, siblings, peers, romantic partners. So what we see is this is where this shows up. It's not at all surprising that children become alienated if they have a personality disordered parent. Personality disorders are interpersonal. In other words, it's about relationships. Unlike other disorders, mental disorders, let's say like schizophrenia, other diagnoses, depression, anxiety, they're basically about the individual. Personality disorders are interpersonal. They're about how they relate to others. And alienation is very much a relationship problem. But what's interesting is the research shows that these personalities, who tend to be part of cluster B, have characteristics of domineeringness, vindictiveness, and intrusiveness. I mean, talk about alienating behaviors, that's what a lot of it's about. So if we look at the personality disorders, their clusters there's cluster A, which are people kind of avoid people. There's cluster C, people tend to avoid conflict. Cluster B tends to be the high conflict people. And that's the ones that I've just been talking about the antisocial, borderline narcissistic. There's a fourth personality, histrionic, that's part of cluster B. So you can see that. Now, I want to talk a little bit about brain development. Oh, so let me back up. So with personality disorders, they can't see themselves as a problem. It's all outside of themselves. They blame others. So they 100% blame other people, and they 100% don't look at themselves. And so you have people who are all good, and that's them, and people who are all bad, that's the other person. They're evil, they're dangerous, whatever. So if we look back at these alienating behaviors, if you see the other parent as an extreme danger to your child's existence, it's not that surprising that you would do these things, like say, call 911 if you feel in danger from the other parent, that they would be venting with an intense emotion about how awful the other parent is. So a lot of this behavior comes from their vision of the other parent in 100% negative terms. Now, guess what? That's contagious. And so the kids absorb that, and now they see the other parent in 100% negative terms. So what you're seeing is a personality disorder set of behaviors transferred to a child as alienation. Now let's talk a little bit about the brain. So our primitive emotions shouldn't control us, but for some they do. So here's some research on the archaeology of mind, the origins of human emotions. As humans, we have higher brain expansions that allow us to think deeply about our nature, as well as about our options to live more cerebrally, higher brain. They talk about the higher brain and the lower brain. Lower brain we share with all mammals. So your cat and your dog has the same lower brain abilities to survive, but they don't have the higher mind abilities to really think things through. And so it says we can bite our tongues when we're angry and not say things that make matters worse. Well, if you think about your cat or your dog, they can't do that. But as humans, we can. And so we can get along in a highly, we're sharing the planet with like 8 billion people, something like that. And by and large, getting along because we have this higher mind. Well, the lower mind doesn't operate like that. It sees things as survival a lot. But it says many choose not to. And it says we use scare quotes in the previous sentence because for many people their emotions are not under the willful control of their higher mind. Indeed, there are reasons to believe that our neocortical functions are substantially programmed by our lower mind in conjunction with our early rearing, leading to blessed lives or to those full of misery. So early childhood forms a lot of this, and we see people with personality disorders tend to either be born this way, or it may be a result of early childhood trauma, abuse, or the result of early childhood indulgence. So these behaviors may be tolerated or encouraged by some parents. So some people grow up learning to be bullies because their parents laughed at that or encouraged that. And so in many ways, alienating parents are bullies, and they lack self-awareness. People that are bullies lack self-awareness. The new book I have out, Our New World of Adult Bullies, talks a lot about how they lack self-awareness, so we have to set limits and impose consequences instead of criticizing and arguing with them. So, emotions are contagious, as I've been talking about, and people with personality disorders often lack emotional boundaries, especially in close family relationships. So it's common that their anxiety spills over, their anger spills over, their sadness spills over, their blame spills over. One of the things I've found in some of my cases, and I often ask this, I say, is the child sleeping in bed with the other parent some of the time now? And I've had kids that are, 9, 10, 12, 15, even a 17-year-old, that the parent was saying, come stay in the bed with me. Well, what happens is the child absorbs that parent's emotions and starts to have the same emotions that that parent has about the other parent. So if that parent's crying in bed, the child beside them is so sad. It's like, oh my goodness, dad or mom made this parent really upset. So that's a way this transfers. Emotional repetition and isolation. And I've talked about this in prior webinars. The idea is emotional repetition gets into your brain deeper than just saying, 2 plus 2 is 4. If you go like 2 plus 2 is 4, you better watch out. Your brain really absorbs that. So emotional repetition. But if it's in isolation, you're isolated just with a parent who's going through all of this stuff, you're going to have more and more alienation. It grows with time. And courts don't understand this by and large. They say, oh, and when the child feels better, then they can see the other parent. No, no, no. This child will feel worse and worse, and you may be sealing the fate of a long-term lack of a relationship. So this is what needs to be understood. So what can be done? So generally, from the start of a family court case or divorce, all the professionals involved need to be watchful to not tolerate letting a wedge develop between the parent and child. And so basically, parents need to say how they're going to protect the child from their upset emotions. And all professionals should ask the parent that. How are you going to protect the child from your upset emotions? Tell me 3 ways you're going to do that. And I suggest to judges that they do that. I suggest that they let people know they're going to ask that, but then to do that and say, how are you going to protect your child from your upset emotions? Because this grows with time. At the first times of resistance, as both parents should have to learn skills for self-management, flexible thinking, managed emotions, moderate behavior, and checking themselves. Now, our method, New Ways for Families, teaches that. We have it as a counseling method, we have it as an online class, we have it as a coaching method. So at least 3 ways that people can learn these skills. Being aware of the hidden nature of primitive emotions and how they transfer, and basically understanding that's why children say, no one told me to think this way. I just thought this on my own. Because they absorbed emotions, but they didn't absorb the reasoning. And there's the right brain and the left brain. Right brain absorbs emotions directly, especially from parents. First couple of years of life, the right brain is how the child knows what's safe, what's dangerous. They don't know logic, they don't know words even, but they know the parent's emotion. Parents holding their hand tightens their grip, you know I'm in danger as a child. Parents laughing, hey, I'm happy. Someone comes in the room, the parent, closes up, child bursts into tears. I know there's danger here. Somebody walks in the room, parents happy, laughing, child happy and laughing too, knows I'm safe. Well, the same thing happens when they're 8 and 9 and 10 and their parents are going through a high conflict divorce. They absorb the parents' emotions, but they don't absorb the reasons. And that's why we get all these lame reasons. I don't like the way he wears his hair, or my mother's no good at math, I never want to see her again. Or they remodeled my bedroom, and so I never want to go there again. So this is emotional, it's driven by personalities, may or may not be disorders, but certainly enough of a problem. So parents need to learn to protect themselves from the upset emotions. But courts need to really understand this and at the start admonish parents. But I also want to say at the start of a case is often where one parent says, my child doesn't want to see the other parent, so I'd like to have, exclusive custody and no contact for the other parent. This is terrible. If there's danger, have supervised contact. Say, well, I don't know what's going on, but I'm going to have that you have a supervisor. And my cases where it's really alienation, they have a supervisor at the top of the case. Supervisor says, hey, this guy or woman gets along great with the kids. The kids loving, they want to hug, they want to show things, parents appropriate, all this stuff. You have a professional supervisor say that in the first month, you're not going to have a 3-year case that waits for an evaluation of whether there's a problem or not. If there's a problem, you're going to see signs of it. And if there isn't a problem, then it may be an alienation. And if you say, well, the child resists contact because they were abused last month, well, then have supervised contact and the parent learn to not be abusive. None of this stuff has to take years, but in reality, it does take years. And in the meantime, there's finger wagging and criticizing parents, which doesn't make it better and often makes it worse. So here's a list of things judges really can and should order at the start of the case. Should admonish parents. Basically, don't discuss the case with the children. I have so many cases where the children know there's a hearing coming up. Mom or dad says, hey, we're having a hearing next week. I'm hoping to get more time with you. You don't do that. Don't talk about it. That's grown-up stuff. Showing court papers to a child. I remember a hearing I had years ago, right before the hearing. There was some papers that had to be exchanged. And mom sits down with daughter, who, by the way, look almost like identical twins, and goes over dad's declaration. Said, look what he said about you. Look what he said about me. And I'm horrified. I'm saying you shouldn't be doing that. You know, they're out in the hallway doing that. And of course, that girl was alienated. And in fact, the judge ordered a change of custody in that situation. So there were so many alienating behaviors, but that's an alienating behavior. Don't do that. And you can use this example when you tell them, don't do that. Telling the children when hearings are occurring, telling them the other parent has a problem. I can't talk about till you're 18. About interfering with the other parent's time, scheduling activities, appointments, family, and friends, and telling the parent that the other parent's very important. So you have a friend visiting from town, maybe a college roommate. That doesn't mean you eliminate the other parent's time. If the other parent agrees, you negotiate, sure. But you don't say, oh, but it was my old friend. Because in many high conflict people's minds, they believe that their whole network is more important than the other parent. And you see this happen. Compare parenting abilities or traits, like the one where my dad's good at math and my mom's no good at math, so I don't want to see her anymore. Don't discuss financial issues. How many parents say, you know, we could go to Disneyland, except that your father doesn't give us the full support he really should be giving us. Or we can't go to Disneyland because I have to give all my money to your mother. And this stuff just spills out of people's mouths all the time, even today. Like I said, I've been seeing this stuff for 40 years. Okay, yell or cry about the other parent. I've seen cases where the other parent really doesn't express anger, but they express their sadness. I had a mediation. Mom says, I don't know why, but our 16-year-old doesn't want to see you as much. And she really wasn't angry, and she was negotiating, and they seemed to have a decent relationship. But she was sad. She didn't want the divorce, and she would cry about it in front of her 16-year-old, who's like, you know, dad's a jerk. He's putting mom through this. So just crying. The anxiety example I've given you, its emotions are contagious is the fundamental problem here. And it's people that lack emotional boundaries, which tends to be people with personality disorders. So that's the driving problem from my point of view. Don't interrogate the child. Don't ask the child to report on the other parent. And don't discuss the reasons for the divorce. We got divorced because your father had an affair. Well, my 4-year-old's angry because her father had an affair. It's like, your 4-year-old? What does your 4-year-old think an affair means? It's like, this is coming from the parent. And so, anyway, these are the this is the approach that I hope eventually people will take, which is, we have to talk about setting limits. You can do this and you can't do that, imposing consequences, nipping this in the bud, not getting to the point of huge evaluations and long hearings, is let's early in the case make sure that the child maintains contact with both parents. and get them learning skills or practicing skills. And people with personality disorders can learn to use more flexible thinking, managed emotions, and moderate behavior. They can change some behaviors without changing their whole personality. And really, we need to understand these aren't people to yell at. These are people that aren't happy. Most alienating parents I've dealt with don't have friends, so they look to professionals for their emotional support. And we need to understand this is a different problem than what we've been thinking it was in terms of people consciously campaigning to be doing bad things. I think we're dealing with people that don't realize what they're doing. And in some ways, it should make it much easier for us to be compassionate and say, hey, you just can't do those things. You can't say those things. And let's make sure that your child has a strong relationship with both parents. That's really what we should do as soon as possible. So just to wrap up, I've got a lot of books. I have a compulsive writing disorder, I think. Anyway, I write about a book a year. So we have high conflict people and legal disputes, especially geared to lawyers, therapists, mediators, judges, but anybody can read it. Don't alienate the kids, geared towards parents, but also professionals. BIF for co-parent communication, really encourage that. That's our most popular book, helps people calm down their written communication. Mediating high conflict disputes, a lot of these cases should be mediated if people understand how to contain the emotions and focus people on compromise and solutions. Calming upset people with this calming with statements, empathy, attention, and respect. And Splitting, our most popular book for people that are facing court hearings, facing evaluations, high conflict, prolonged disputes. A lot of tips in there that fit with all of this. Last but not least is a relatively new book, is Our New World of Adult Bullies. And in many ways, adult bullies in all aspects of society have some traits of personality disorders and lack of awareness. Most bullies don't really realize the impact they have and how much it's going to hurt them in the long run. And by and large, they're not happy people. So we talk about them in families, workplace, communities, online, etc. So I'd like to thank you for listening in. Hopefully this has added some useful information and a way of thinking about parents who engage in alienating behaviors. Do they really know what they're doing? Best wishes.
Next week on Families Divided TV, Grace Pahalski discusses unique considerations with adolescents in parental alienation.